Yes, and so, again, those are the only questions, the 5 or 6 questions they asked, and they only yielded one of those response.
And that'll be, so part of the critical next steps with the RFP process is, getting the word out that in the development community at large, that this is a welcoming town for this kind of work. So, the members of the EDC, others that may be in town that know the development industry should be encouraged, if they have ideas, to come forward with potential developers so that we make sure that we target the developers in the RFP, that they actually get the RFP. That it isn't just a response that goes onto the central register. There's definitely a lot of value in reaching out to the developers individually and making them aware of the type of project that we have available. So, I have contacts at Conservation Law Foundation that are doing sustainable community work, that this is squarely in their wheelhouse. They're creating a short list of companies that they work with, that they've been developing pipeline projects for throughout Massachusetts, and now it's going to greater northern New England as well. They'll provide that to us, and with some recommendations of who we might go out to. And there are other people. Bill may know someone, you yourselves may know some potential developers. So the personal touch doesn't hurt. So we want to make sure that everybody's aware of that and makes the outreach if they have the opportunity to do so. That's what will make for a successful RFP process.
Right.
Just a question. Is there a plan or a way that we can more broadly publicize what's going on in Upton in terms of the new business district, the targeted development? I know you've probably heard about this, and it's probably sort of come full circle in some ways. You guys might have even been the ones that suggested this, but I just want to have a conversation about, are there ways to publish, outside of the town crier, sort of cast a wider net so that we get some visibility on what's going on in town, what we're trying to do, what the specific opportunities are?
I think there is, and it's interesting that this microbrewery concept, that these people that came forward with the microbrewery, was part of that was an outgrowth of the whole process of trying to get the business zone passed and the redevelopment concept through a vision. So there's certainly the opportunity, and whether it's in Greater Worcester, the Worcester Business Magazine or other areas, we do need to do a much better job of getting out there with what's occurred and the potential for of the town of Upton and the business community and the development community as well. So that's part of the work that we've talked about with the small business fairs at the kind of the smaller level, but we need to make that on a macro level. So, the Blackstone Valley is, and the organization around, the Blackstone Valley and the Heritage Corridor Commission and those places all should be knowledgeable about what we've done, and I don't think we've really done a lot of outreach in that regard. So that's something that the EDC should be taking on, and there are I don't see any other department in town or any other
that would do it.
Volunteer board that could do it. Again, this speaks to the planner, because the planner is oftentimes a liaison between the broader business community and the town itself. I mean, we have the example is we have this person with the microbrewery. They come in and speak to the EDC, and the EDC is like, well, what can we do for you? Right. When we have no real authority, we can't coordinate. We're not, we're volunteer board. We can't coordinate all the meetings with all the other boards and authorities that are necessary to get a small business, approved for a project. So
if we can get 118 Main Street into Worcester Magazine, then we can probably get our whole economic development plan in that magazine.
Right, the Boston Business Journal.
Right. So
The other thing is the Blackstone Valley Chamber of Commerce has a open for business session.
Yeah.
And we can ask Jeannie if she could maybe host one here, and on the day that we do that, we can notify some developers and maybe invite people in and have a conversation about what's going on. So that's another opportunity that we can take advantage of too.
It's all building on this whole, we started, the EDC, remember, the EDC is only a year old. We've got an awful lot done in a year with a really dedicated committee and group of people. that have, you know, pushed in lockstep, and everybody's come with good ideas. We need to continue to do that, but we do need support of the professional staff. So that's part of the reason we're advocating for a planner. We can only be as good as, you know, our follow-through, and our follow-through can't always be that great.
Well, and you can only do so much, right? Like, everybody's volunteers, everybody's got other things they're doing and other priorities. So if you can have someone that can help sort of maintain some continuity through the conversations, and like, hey, you know what, I'm going to focus on getting the word out. So I'm going to call Worcester Magazine, I'm going to call the Blackstone Valley Chamber of Commerce, and sort of go through that process.
And we also need to do a better job of reaching out to our legislators and letting them know what we're doing. You know, David Meridian was at town meeting twice, you know, to see the two actions that were taken. But you know, unless he's made aware of what the import of those things are and that he can bring it forward to, you know, to the state resources, well, there's a communication gap, right? We need to make sure that there's continuity in communication, that what we're doing here makes it to, you know, the legislature and the, you know, the organizations within.
I do have to say, I think we and Derek do a great job of keeping Rep. Meridian in the loop on what we're doing. He's walked around the center with Derek, and so.
He's a strong proponent of what we're trying to accomplish.
And he's a great rep. I mean, he does, you know, he really does rep the community as well, and the individuals within them.
He does an awful lot for the town. He really does. Always is advocating for more for us.
And who, you guys were out here with, was it Mass DOT that was out here with him that day you were walking around the center?
We've got he's brought Mass DOT out here, the director of Mass DOT, Barry Longian. He's brought out the Undersecretary for Economic Development, Tim McGurty out here. So yeah, he's done everything he can to get some.
So those things are, I just want to reassure the EDC that those things are happening.
And he's brought and Mass Development came out that same day. So we had a good core group of organizations from the state that were here, you know, represented that day. And again, it's just follow through. We just need to be staying in our.
And it's a testament to all the work you guys have done. It's great.
Unbelievable. Town planner.
We already came in.
So in our last CDC meeting, we brought up this town planner topic, and I did a little bit of research, and I've got job descriptions for Grafton, Hopkinton, and Northbridge. So if we were going to try to formalize, I guess, a process to begin looking for a town planner, is it too early to go to personnel board to say, here's some ideas of a job description, or where can we go with that?
So in order to get, so first we have to go to the personnel board. They're the ones that would approve the position description. They would be the ones that would classify this position within a certain pay grade. And then, but that's where they stop, right? And then after that, it would be the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee, that they would be the Board of Selectmen, the hiring authority, Finance Committee would be the authority to appropriate funding for this position at the May town meeting.
Okay. So I have those descriptions, I'll forward them. Get started on that process. I did speak with Paul Flaherty as far as FinCom goes, and he's favorable, and again, it's fine for money. I spoke with a couple of other selectmen, I spoke with past town selectmen, and that's the only objection, it's money. Everyone thinks it's probably a good idea, probably that we start with maybe a half-time person. And a full-time person, some of the numbers I've seen so far seem to be just slightly north of $100,000. So I think a conversation maybe we had in the past, maybe 60 is the number you pigeonhole for a half person.
And I think it's premature to start talking about salaries and costs and numbers.
Right.
It's got a long way to go.
They actually moved past that topic, we're on to a different topic.
Yeah.
So we're going backwards in the program.
Sorry, that was
Yeah, that's you're a little ahead of us on that, so we've got a little bit of work to do on that.
So the primary purpose of the EDC has been, you know, to raise the level of attention of the community to the things that can be done. And, you know, that's within the community, right? You're bringing up outside of the community, that's kind of the next step. We've made some really large steps, you know, for the community itself, but they'll only take us so far. So we need to expand the audience, as you put it, but we also need to take other actions and come up with our own ideas rather than waiting for ideas to come to us. And again, looking forward, what we're looking at is the economic development plan, kind of along the lines of what you were talking about, the master plan. It creates a list of aspirations. You know, when I say aspirations, it's like, what do we want to see for businesses here? You know, it's not open for every kind of business. We want certain kinds of business. So we need to be careful about the concepts that we throw out there and what we can do. We're not a Grafton, we're not a Westboro. You know, we're a smaller community that doesn't have the infrastructure that's required to, bring in a big box store. And we don't necessarily want a big box store. So part of the work of the EDC is to identify what are the strengths of the community from a business perspective, and where do we see individually opportunities, and open those up, identify the opportunities and then expose those opportunities to the broader population. And one of those things that we seem to think have identified is the concept of, while we don't have a lot of sewer, we don't have a lot of water, we have an awful lot of energy transmission infrastructure in the town, and we have an awful lot of commuter traffic that goes down West Upton Road, Hoppington Road, whatever you want to call it. So one of the thoughts that came out that we introduced to Central Mass Planning, and we've been trying to do a little bit of development work on, is that, like it or not, we're a commuter hub. So why don't we try and take advantage of being a commuter hub and bring try and encourage reverse commuting back to the state forest area. There's the transmission infrastructure that exists in the area on Hoppington Road and right adjacent to the state forest would seem to lend itself to a mass transit alternative, potentially buses and a commuter lot. That would, would really serve the community well. And if we combine that with energy storage, large-scale battery storage with the interconnection setup that's there, those are very, very, very high-value infrastructure projects that would greatly increase the taxable, from an excise tax perspective, tax base of the community. So rather than trying to attract something that requires a lot of services from us, we should be looking for the highest value things that, of that type, like a data center is another high-value, low-cost to the town to provide infrastructure. And again, we have these transmission infrastructures in place. We're trying to develop those concepts. And there's a lot of money available through the state right now for transit-oriented development. And that will bring us up the scale when we're looking for the next grant cycle and we want to do stuff downtown here. If we have the vision to lay this on the table, again, aspirations of being, taking advantage of our strengths, we'll be very well positioned to attract the funding that's necessary going forward. So
Is this the transit hub idea you were going to pitch in January?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just throwing out there, that needs to be developed further to understand where we can go. But this is the kind of thing that the EDC can do and should be doing, and we'll work with Derek and others to try and bring attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and, as I said, the Nano Brewery, this is on the list, the Nano Brewery, I guess, has been in. They came and spoke with us. Based upon speaking with us, they met with all of the other boards and committees in town. They seem credible and really anxious to try and do business in town. It would be a great little launch for the downtown area if we could successfully get them involved. So we've all been, very favorably disposed towards them, and, we'll try and help them if we can. It's, we'll see how it goes, right? I guess they've been in to talk with you.
They're actually having a meeting on January 14th here at Town Hall. It's some of their investors. It's open to the public for others to learn more about the proposed business plan. They want to show the investors the space, so they're very interested in then moving right along. They're hoping to open doors August 1st.
Can you clarify what this is for people that have no idea what we're talking about?
Sure.
So we have a small group of dedicated brewers who have been doing amateur brewing for years. I think a decade is probably at the low end of the estimate of what they've been doing. It's an engineer, a marketer, and was it two engineers?
IT.
And an IT guy. And their love of beer has driven them to the point of they want to try and do this professionally. They have a business plan, they have recipes, they have some unique engineering that they've applied to brewing technology that they want to put into action. They think they've, as they say, dialed it in on their brewing technology, and they've identified a location in downtown, right adjacent to us here, Stephen Taylor's property, as a potential site for a small brew, not even a pub, a small brewery, where it would be direct retail to the public, and a tasting room, and no food being served, that kind of thing. But very high-level microbrew gourmet beer concept. I think they have 4 recipes, or is it 5 recipes?
I think they have about a half a dozen.
Yeah, I think they have 4 recipes that they think are a great place to start based upon their market research. And they're in as Derek said, they're in the money-raising phase, and they want to get going quickly.
It's funny because, it's interesting, I think that between, an idea like that, it's consistent with what we just talked about in the core fitness building, with having sort of a wine tasting, specialty wine shop there, so that, that sort of starts to create a little bit of a theme where we sort of have some of these more boutique-y, higher-end, specialized type retail businesses in town that could be interesting, could be a good fit for the town.
And that business model really has been very successful in Hopkinton and Milford. There's local breweries there that are doing quite well. So, you feel like there's definitely a market. It's just a matter of, do we have the right market here?
Well, they came in with a map, right? And the map showed all the breweries around us, these breweries, whether it was Purgatory and Northbridge and, Startline and Hopkins, it's a big hole right here. We need to have, little microbrewery.
If they're willing to give it a try, we're willing to help them.
So one of the issues we talked with them about is the parking issue. That's going to be a little bit of a issue for them. And we explained that we now have a shared parking bylaw, which would allow you to have a fewer number of spaces if you can, work out an arrangement with a neighbor on sharing parking. So it turns out that they only want to be open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So Friday afternoon, Saturday, and Sunday, town hall is closed, and there's parking spaces here. It's conceivable that they could work out an arrangement with the town to share the town's parking spaces, which would be a really good example of how shared parking can help a small business.
Right. I wonder if the church would be amicable to some sort of an agreement with them.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Very curious what Pastor Lori thinks of this one. That'll be an important person to get on our side.
But
That's a good point.
no matter what happens, the fact that we've actually got somebody that's interested in doing this, it's a great dry run, right? No matter how we we'll learn a tremendous amount about the process. We'll learn what the limitations of the bylaw potentially are that we just passed, maybe where it needs to be tweaked. There's a lot of things of great value in trying to deal with, the first one. There's no question we have a lot to learn and a lot we'll find out by doing this.
Right. Even strategizing or thinking through parking dilemmas, as far as hours of operation and things like that, it's a good exercise moving forward.
Exactly.
So,
Styrofoam and plastic bags, we're almost done. We're almost one.
The plastic bag thing, the concern was just making sure that we've identified all the affected businesses, and that as a town, we communicate to those businesses as soon as we can, because many businesses order stuff 2 or 3 months in advance. This bylaw is going to take effect July 1st, then these businesses have to find alternative products soon, and they need to budget they need to budget this, and they need to plan the process. So we just wanted to make sure that we know who all the businesses are that are going to be affected by this, and who is going to be communicating the details of this bylaw to those businesses. So I guess you spoke with Lori today about that.
So I met this afternoon with the petitioners to talk about the implementation of the bylaw. Although the bylaw reads the enforcement agency is the Board of Health, we have a shared commitment that we'll do this together. Diana, I touched base this morning, I've talked to other Board of Health members about doing this cooperatively. So I've stated today that I will draft a letter to all the businesses that I would expect to go out by mid-January, so they have 6 months' notice about this new law. That I'm going to work with the Board of Health and with Laurie to try to identify all the businesses. I don't think that'll be that hard to find all the businesses. Send out the letter, and then we'll work out the enforcement aspect come July 1st thereafter.
Okay. Very good. So we have a strategy there. Is there anything else? Any other questions? No questions?
Great. Thank you for your undivided attention.
Very good. Thank you for coming in, gentlemen.
Appreciate all the work.
Forgot to actually have them introduce themselves. I forgot to have them introduce themselves when they came in. So, all right. I don't see Steve Lovis are here, so, on to Article 4.1, discussion of trash bag storage. Mr. Desjardins and Diane Curran. Richard and Diane, good evening, folks.
Honorable Select Board. Yeah, we have a little bit of a problem, and the problem is storage of our yellow and blue bags. Right now, we have a person, we have a place that takes the storage and stores our bags for when we need them. And what that means to us is it saves us from $9,000 to $10,000 a year by buying in bulk. And if we want to continue that, we have to find a place, because the place that's storing our bags now says that at the end of this particular shipment purchase, they will no longer take our bags. So we have been looking into different aspects of storage. One of them is a storage, is a storage container.
Okay.
They're 8 feet by 20 feet, 8 feet by 40 feet, but we think we can get away with an 8-foot by 20 feet. And at the cost of $3,535 for purchasing this particular storage facility. The location where we put this storage facility would be, we were thinking with your help here, either parking it where we have a shed in back of the library, or the same place that the library has their storage facility for their books, Thompson's parking area. We haven't asked for that privilege yet.
Right.
But speaking with the board, we hope that we get an assent to continue. And we also have ideas where to get the funding for this purchase, which would be purchased by the Board of Health itself. There's such a thing as leasing for $80 a month. And we think that if we're going to keep doing this and save $9,000 to $10,000 a year, it's best to buy and keep purchasing in bulk. So we're asking for your permission and ideas.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely would be more of a fan of buying and owning the container as opposed to renting it. These have quite a long life cycle.
I was gonna say it lasts forever.
Right, you hate to say that, but that's pretty close. The cost you said was $3,500 and...
Yes, in purchase, it's $35.35.
$35.35.
And that's delivery, tax, that's everything.
That's everything, okay. I just wanted to have that. Right now, you said they're stored. Are they stored in town, or is it the vendor that's storing them
No,
for
we
us now?
store a pallet at a time
Right.
in the shed next to the library.
That's about all we can fit. There's maybe a pallet and a half in the shed.
Okay.
So they're stored in a warehouse, I think it's out in Marlboro, and all I do is call them, and the next day they deliver them.
The pallet.
So that warehouse is no longer going to be able to help us as soon as we finish up what we have. The blue ones, they want out because they're not moving fast enough. So I've got to do something really soon. The yellow, they'll let us leave there until they're gone, but
Do they charge us, or?
no, it was all part of the whole cost. And
Agreement.
we can't find a better cost on trash bags. I've looked. And the quality of these bags, everything about them, I prefer to stay with this company. The price is fantastic.
So they manufacture the bags, or they,
They work together. It's a manufacturer in a warehouse, and they have an agreement, and I don't know how all their legwork is. I deal with one person, and he takes care of everything.
And the way they're proposing this, would they ship a whole year's worth of bags, and you would store it 1 year at a time in this container? Is that what you're thinking of doing?
Well, he's also going to, the manufacturer is also looking for another vendor that might store them for us. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, so I just want to have something ready because they want these out. If it happens that we don't need, the blue ones don't move fast enough for, I don't think anybody's going to be okay with us storing the blue ones. The yellow ones, I might be able to find another warehouse. But either way, we've got to have storage.
how many pallets of blue bags do we have?
I think we've got about another 4 or 5. Not all stores sell them, which is why they don't move as fast as the yellow. The people that use them love them.
How many pallets of
Yellow?
yellow bags do we go through a year, or would need to be
We
stored?
go through like a pallet a month with the yellow.
So would one of these fit 12 pallets?
It's 20 feet and they're 8
8
feet
feet
wide,
wide.
so,
They're 2 pallets wide.
Yeah, you can usually stack them side by each,
right.
Yeah.
typically.
Essentially, I think that we can try to get the Thompsons to okay us putting that container on their property. We can ask them. And if it'd be all right with you too, we could put it where our shed is at the library. You can see they're not that pretty. They're not like the shed we have now. But, a shed would cost us just as much, and it would be 10 by 10, 8 by 10.
Wouldn't fit, right?
No.
Right, right. As I said earlier, I think it's a good idea to own the container. Now, obviously, it's a need. You've got to be able to store the bags, so I don't see much way around that part of it. I don't think, for my liking, I guess I'll let you folks, let my colleagues weigh in as well. I don't think I like the idea of putting it on where the library is. I just think it's going to be much bigger than the shed that's there. I think that's going to be maybe a little bit of an eyesore there. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But by the same token, I don't know if it's a good idea to ask, if you think that it would be okay to leave it, but that would be not on town property. So, I mean, at some point in time, that agreement's going to come to an end, so we'd have to then be prepared to move it. So that's kind of a short-term fix.
Exactly.
Yes, it
So, yeah, and I guess the third component, I'll throw out all the ideas and then I'll step back. The third component is, what do we have for possible funding sources? I know that we do have some money left probably in the Selectmen's.
Sources at this time, I would say that the trust fund for any municipal purpose would probably be the only funding source that I could think of for this.
Didn't the Board of Health say they were?
You were going to purchase it, correct?
Yeah, we,
Yeah, they're purchasing the.
yeah,
The Board of Health can pay for it.
I did not hear that you said you had a funding source.
yeah,
Okay.
we have the funds to fund it from
Okay.
the sale of our bags.
Okay. I apologize, I missed that.
In the bulk items too. We have thought of other things. Derek had suggested maybe even storing them at the church, which initially I thought that was a great idea, but it's not secure, and we'd have to bring the bags in one box at a time, instead of where we can put the whole pallet in one of these.
Right.
It would be such a huge task to try to store them in there, and then, again, they're not secure. If you guys can come up with something better, I'd love to hear it. I don't know what else to do at this point.
But we do have to be able to take a two-wheeler and
Right,
put 3-4 of the packaged bags and bring them into the town hall.
right.
Or bring them to the different stores, but we have people that do that for us.
Okay.
So there's nowhere else in town, Derek, that we could store this?
The other two ideas I had, and I ran it past the Director of Public Works, was potentially the wastewater treatment plant. They have some area over there, but after talking to Dennis, he thought that he could find space over at the DPW barn. That'd be a better alternative than over the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah. Well, I think that would be a little apprehensive to put it on property that's not town-owned. And as I said, I think it's going to be an eyesore behind the church. So it would be nice if there is room at the DPW. Is that straightforward, and does that fit into your?
It would fit if we could ask them to bring, say, one pallet at a time to our shed, then we could handle it from there. But to ask any of our female employees to handle a pallet of those bags, I wouldn't ask anybody to do that. I'd do it first. And at my age,
I'm sorry.
I wouldn't have a young lady carry a pallet of bags to the town hall. I said I would do it first.
I guess the next question, this is maybe your question, which is how many boxes of bags are on the pallet, and each one, what does it weigh? Like, for instance, would the pallet weigh 1,000 pounds?
4 boxes in a pallet.
In a pallet.
And right now, Paul Marchand and I, when the pallet comes, we unload it into the shed. So, as much as I agree that the DPW is town-owned, and there's probably a spot for one of these over there, it's just not convenient to have to, Paul brings over a dolly full of bags, like once a week for me. Ted Briggs delivers them to Honey Farms. I mean, the DPW isn't open past 3, I believe, most days, which may be inconvenient. It's not the perfect scenario, it's a solution, but just not the best.
That's why I mentioned if the DPW would be responsible to bring a pallet at a time when it's required to our shed, we would gladly
Right.
park it there. But
I have a little bit of experience with pallets and pallet trucks and that sort of thing, and I can tell you that it's, typically, you would put forks on the front of a loader, and it's not necessarily an easy job. So to ask them in their operations to put forks, you kind of bolt them in place on the front of the machine, and you'd have to pick it up that way, but then they'd have to transport it with a truck. So I don't think that it's feasible, without burning up a whole lot of Dennis's resources, to ask them to move a pallet in that fashion, because then you still have to get it off the truck with those forks and put it into your container, or, at that point, your shed. So I don't think that would work, in my humble opinion. So I guess, any thoughts on the container at the Thompson property? I think that's about it.
A couple of thoughts. Just aesthetically, putting a container in the center of town, I think, is distressing. I don't think anybody in the town that you would talk to would say, yeah, put a giant shipping container at the library, or put another giant shipping container in the Thompson property. Not a single person that I can think of would think that was a great aesthetic thing to do. I hear you, it's a functional thing to do, so maybe what we can do is come up, and I think it's very gracious of the DPW director to allow us, or to offer the option of storing it there. I think that there's probably a way to figure out the logistics. It sounds like if you take a dolly's worth of boxes from the shed to the town hall once a week, can probably drive over there in a car, put 6 boxes in the trunk and drive them over here back. I mean, I can do it for you if you want me to. It's not, right, so I don't, that doesn't seem to, I mean, it doesn't seem to me to be too much of a challenge. I don't want to speak for you, Diane. What is that?
I'm sorry, but I would not like any of our employees, because they're pretty heavy. And right now, they are doing it.
Well, but Paul could do it, right? We could ask Paul to help. He's helping, right, he's doing it now. So instead of taking the 2-wheeler over to the library, he can hop in his truck and drive to the DPW and grab 6 boxes. I mean, am I missing something?
No, yeah.
It's just another added responsibility for him, and the person that does honey farms often does it at night,
Yeah.
and the DPW, like I said, closes at 3. So.
But if you store the box here, they have a key fob, they can just come in.
If we store them in the shed, yes, but we'd have to get them from the DPW to the shed. They're all minor problems, but they're inconvenient problems. It's not like it's a major problem. I just,
Yeah,
we're
no,
just gonna have to figure
I
out.
hear you. I just balance that against the sight of a 40-foot or 20-foot trailer in the center of our town. That's all. That's my.
Well, the idea that Selectman Simus wants our employee, Paul, to do it, he could bring it to the town hall rather than to the storage facility next to the library. It would be just a few minutes longer, the drive from the highway barn to the town hall.
We'll just, if that's what we get, then that's what we have to work out, that's all. Okay.
Trying to think if there's any other solutions. We don't have any other property that's available to us. That would be closer.
Not close to the center of town.
Right.
Right, the challenge is the size of the container. If we can put a shed somewhere, I just don't see a.
You know, if something
Place
happens
that's
with the
better.
Thompson property, then you're gonna be
Right.
facing the cost of moving the container. We're gonna be having the same conversation a year from today, or whatever the case may be. So I guess it's tough to find the final, we don't have a lot of good options.
Right, a perfect answer.
I know, and
Yeah.
there isn't. We've come to that realization ourselves.
We will contact the young man probably tomorrow, or Derek, if you want to call our young engineer to do that. Give us a location, and we can make the arrangements to get the storage facility. Thank you.
I think Dennis is probably gonna suggest using the container to close off Warren Street. I think it's.
Put a fence on that side of it, we might be onto something. It's quite nice.
Let's see, I think it's,
I have to say that. Sorry, Dennis.
Outside the box. Really good idea.
we're talking about an 80-foot container then, aren't we? Thank you
I think
very
we
much.
should make that motion, I like that.
Some of the difficulties of trying to get the bags open. But I was just going to suggest, Mr. Chairman, is that certainly during the summertime when we have our seasonal employees that are on the road 5 days a week, I can have seasonal employees grab a bunch of boxes and bring them over to you and try to keep you stocked in your, I'm sure we can work something out.
We'll have to talk, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate it.
But we'll make sure it happens.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Discussion item 4.2, discuss the Community Center Steering Committee. Matthew, please come forward. We have, I believe we're going to discuss the mission statement that you have and some other ideas you'd like to share with us.
Yes, so at the last meeting, the selectmen talked about forming the building committee and whether or not, once the building committee is going, is there still a need for an additional committee we're calling the steering committee? And the opinion of the prospective members is that certainly there's enough work and they'd like to continue doing things and they think there's able to be a clear separation between what's a building committee task and what's a steering committee task. And I think the result of the discussion was that there was some consensus that that seemed like a good idea, and now we need to just approve. So the steering committee is appointed by the selectmen, so it's essentially your committee, and you would need to issue a charge, a new charge to the committee. And they've submitted a draft that is sort of, these are the things we'd be happy if you told us to go do them. And you can take that document, and if there's any changes you want to make to it, obviously you can. It would be your charge to them. But I'm happy to answer any questions about why they put certain things in there or what it means.
Okay. Again, I had attended the meeting a few weeks ago. I had a chance to read it in a little bit more depth over the last week or two. So, pretty comfortable with it. Do you have any questions, Maureen?
No, it looked pretty good.
Okay, you feel it's thorough. Brett, do you think it's thorough, overreaching? What are your thoughts?
I think it's great. I don't have any issue with it. Just a question. So there were two documents I saw. One was the one-pager with sort of the split down the middle with the building committee and the community center steering committee, and then there was the much longer document. Who created each of those, and are they meant to be like in sync?
So the charge, which is the 2-page one with all the detail, that was created by the committee, and that's the feasibility. Currently, it's the feasibility committee.
Okay.
They're hoping to turn into the steering committee.
They created the 2-pager.
Yes.
Got it.
And then that's what hopefully could get approved tonight and issued to them. The other document,
Yes.
I created, actually, the committee looked at it and approved it.
Yeah.
But that's just a simplified, it doesn't need to be approved, it's not official.
Right.
It's just,
This is a reflection of what's in there, sort of a summary of what's in there. They're not in conflict. I didn't see that they were, but I wanted to make sure if this was created by somebody else, that everything was aligned.
no, they created them together. And the point of that was to sort of say, there is enough separation between
Perfect.
building committee and steering committee.
Yeah, and then the only question, the only other question I had, and this is just a clarification, is who is responsible for developing, coordinating, and bringing forth whatever warrant articles would be required throughout the project life cycle? I don't know if there's...
In this case, it would be the building committee.
Okay, so the building committee is responsible for that, again, using the steering committee as an input, as a guide, and they sort of as consultants, but then it's the building committee that's responsible for going to town meeting and saying, hey, this is the budget, this is what we need, here's the final design.
Here's the construction documents, this is the cost, this is the...
That's all building committee.
Yep.
That's what I wanted to just make sure I was clear on. So,
Okay.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, I'm all set.
All set? Okay.
Thank you.
Maureen, did you have anything you wanted to ask, or anything to
I
add?
agree with it.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay. Seeing no other discussion, anything else that we need to know, Matthew?
So if you approve this charge, which it sounds like you're about to do, the next question is, what do we do about the composition of the committee? So right now, it's a 5-person committee. 3 of the existing 5 members have indicated they'd like to continue on the steering committee. So there's a logistical question of, would you want to reappoint a whole new group and those 3 people should reapply? Or do you want to keep those 3 as existing and just add 2? I don't know how that works.
Well, I think we kind of answered that last time when we renamed.
Just renamed it, right.
Yeah.
That's right. We renamed it, so I think,
It's a good point, so I don't think we need to...
yeah, so I think we're pretty good there. I think I mentioned that why make people go through that added step, create, reappoint a new chairman, set up a new committee, all that. I think we keep the basic composition as it is. I think at our last meeting, we've pretty much been informed that we have probably 2 members that are going to step away. So we'll probably have 2 openings. So I don't think there's anything we need to do at this point in time with regard to that.
Would you have to put out applications for 2 more committee members?
I'm not sure we actually have the resignations yet, but that's a good, as far as public service, I think we want to certainly make mention of that, but I don't think we have resignations from the committee yet, or do we?
No, we're anticipating 2 resignations, so once we get those formal resignations, we'll do what we always do and post it on social media and send out a notice to the website, so on and so forth.
Okay.
Can you just help me with the math again? Sometimes I struggle with this. It's a 7-member committee. The current committee is 5, right?
So what we have now is we have 5 appointed members and 2 ad hoc, non-voting members, and those are the staff support, myself and Janice.
Got it.
So we'd be
it's
looking
the
at-
2 of you plus 3 additional that are staying, so.
Right.
But 5, yeah. So
But
we're
Janice
5
and I don't
members, right.
See, I didn't even need a pencil for that. Thank you.
It was on.
Nice, thank you.
All right, so we've got this well sorted out, right?
I believe so.
So I make a motion that we approve the charge for the Community Center Steering Committee as written, submitted.
Second.
And make that unanimous action?
Thank you.
Thank you for
Very good, thank you.
all your work and leadership.
Do you want to take one item out of order since Matthew's here?
What do you have?
Item 4.4.
All right. Yeah, would you like to stay for a few minutes so we can discuss item 4.4, motion to expend from the Laura Dirth Library Trust Fund. Let me just read that. I can get my screen to work there. I believe it's $731 of expendable dollars from that fund.
For the purchase of books for the library collection in fiscal year 2020.
Now, I did notice in the will, it makes mention that the books that are to be bought have to be inscribed with her name.
Yes, we have book plates that we put
Okay,
inside
so
the front of them.
we do have the ability to do that part of it, okay. I guess I'll read it real quick. The Upton Town Library Board of Trustees requests your authorization to expend up to $731 from the Laura Dirth Library Trust Fund, account number, in FY 2020 for the purchase of books for the library collection. I'll read the final paragraph. As of December 10th, 2019, the expendable balance of the fund was $11,514.15, and the income earned in FY 2019 was $731.03. There were no expenditures from this fund in FY 2019. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Just that probably going forward, we'd expect to want to spend the preceding fiscal year's interest every year, so you'll probably see me or someone from the trustees every year asking with a similar request.
Okay. Now is there still around about $700 hanging in the balance that wasn't expended? Oh, I see, this is for FY19. Okay.
Yeah, so we've built up some interest that we haven't spent over previous fiscal years, but we went back and looked at the will and realized that it does say we're supposed to be doing these things annually.
Okay.
And these expenditures also help us meet our requirements for certification from the MVLC. So it takes a little, it's $700 less we have to put in our budget request.
Okay. I like the sounds of that. All right, any questions, Brett or Maureen?
Does anybody know anything about the Dirth family?
I do not.
Okay. I will find out. So I make a motion that we approve the expenditure of $731 from the Dirth Trust Fund for the purchase of books.
I'll second.
Can I make that unanimous action? I think according to the will, they weren't residents of town.
It was
At
from,
the
they were from
time.
Pennsylvania, I know.
Yeah,
So
I saw
they
that.
must have some connection to Upton, I just
Yeah.
never heard the name.
Yeah, 1972 was the
1972.
day of the, and it's not really a will, I guess they donated the money in memory of Laura.
Right.
So whether maybe she lived in town or
Maybe it was her married name or-
I don't
Yeah,
know.
maybe for a period of time.
Yeah, we'll find out. Oh, Glenn might know something.
Glenn, do you have a comment?
Just a footnote, I had Laura Dirth as my second grade teacher in Milton School.
Oh, she was a teacher in town.
Is that right?
She You live across the street where the strip mall is now, and a row house that was almost as long as that parking lot, and one unit deep, I suppose, I don't remember for sure.
Laura Durr, second grade teacher.
Is that right?
Perfect.
One of the best teachers I ever had. She didn't know I was there.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Glenn.
Very good, very good information.
Great.
All right. Okay, next on to discussion item 4.3, a motion to approve various donations. We have 3 donations. We'll talk about them one at a time, which are, the first is a $100 donation from Ann Hill to the Upton Council of Aging. The second is a $6,000 donation from the charitable fund that Representative David Meridian presented to the Council of Aging. And next we have a $200 donation from Senator Moore. So, the first one is, again, $100 from Ann Hill. It says Ann was very active at the community center, volunteering and participating in activities. She was greatly missed. So her family has made this donation to the Council of Aging. Any questions, or I will take a motion to accept?
I move that we accept $100 in memory of Ann Hill for the Council on Aging.
Second.
Make that unanimous action. And I'll read this one. Again, this is the $6,000 donation. State Representative David Meridian and Upton resident Pat O'Toole delivered an amazing surprise during the last Men's Club supper. Together they presented a donation of $6,000 to the Upton Center. The check was made possible by a charity golf tournament, which is run by Rep. Meridian's private charitable foundation and sponsored by Pat's employer, New England Disposal Technologies of Sutton, along with other businesses. Needless to say, we are overwhelmed by their generosity. And the recommendation is to accept the donation.
I make a motion that we accept the $6,000 donation from the Meridian charity.
I'll second.
And make that unanimous action. Fantastic work. Thank you both gentlemen
Amazing.
for that. And
Impressive round of fundraising and donation. That's awesome.
yeah,
A lot of money.
That's something, yeah.
Yeah, great.
And I believe he also makes, out of that same charitable foundation, he also makes donations to Grafton and Northbridge as well.
Ricky does,
So
yeah.
it's talking about outreach, earlier in the program tonight, we were talking about outreach to our state rep and state senator, and
He's very involved in the community.
yeah, we really have a good one.
You're
So,
lucky.
Very fortunate. Okay, and the last one that we have here, again, I'll read it quickly. We recently received a very generous donation of $200 from Senator Michael Moore for our Christmas party. I am respectfully requesting that we are able to accept this very generous gift with much appreciation. So I will take a motion.
I move that we accept the $200 from Senator Moore, Michael Moore, for the Christmas party for the Council on Aging.
Second.
And make that unanimous action. Very good. Thank you, Senator. All right. Okay, Article 4.5, motion to approve policy procedures for manual. Derek, could you speak about this a little bit?
Sure, so in the town's new policy and procedure manual, personnel policy and procedure manual, we are recommending 2 changes once again. Just to remind folks that we no longer have to go to town meeting to change the bylaw because it's now a policy and procedure under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen. So under 4.1-3, performance review procedures, the recommendation is to strike no later than 1 month prior to the end of the calendar year. What that is referring to is when we require our department heads and board and committee members to conduct their annual performance review on each employee. And so what is being recommended here is that we strike the piece about the end of the calendar year, and then we just include an annual performance review has to be completed by each employee. The reason being is because, as you all know, the Personnel Board is going through the compensation recommendation, and in the compensation recommendation, there will be a requirement to do an annual performance review. So it's going to be outlined when that review has to take place. So the review itself, again, just to reiterate, will be outlined in the compensation plan once that's complete. The other recommendation is that we strike the term vacation time from the sentence, hours worked will not include any sick time, personal leave, or other leaves of absence, whether paid or unpaid, used during the week. And so to summarize, what that means is that if an individual takes vacation time during the week and they get called in on Saturday or Sunday for overtime, the vacation time will be used towards their overtime. It sounds unusual, but it's actually one of the most common practices in local government. And so what we are proposing here is to fix a couple of issues that we have with some of our non-union personnel that work multiple functions, in particular in the fire and the police department. And because of the way they were getting paid overtime when they took time off, vacation time, but then because of this new personnel procedures manual, we had to take that away from them. So we're trying to provide the benefit that they've always enjoyed and just making that effective through the policy.
So kind of break that down just a little bit. Would that make it then, more expensive for say the Board of Selectmen or the treasurer collector paying salaries? Does this make it more expensive to do business or less?
Yeah, ultimately it would make, historically in the town of Upton, it's a net zero effect on our budget because this has been the past practice. We've always done this. But once we approved this policy and procedure manual a year ago, what we realize is that it's now prohibited. It's a prohibited practice. And so that created some consternation from those individuals that this was always a past practice. So what we're trying to do is trying to give them back a benefit that they've always had. And so the DPW already has this benefit. So again, basically if someone took 8 hours of vacation time on Monday and they then came to work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and they were called into work on Saturday, that would be considered overtime, even though they didn't physically come to work on Monday because they took a vacation day. Now, if they called sick on a Monday, so they took sick time, and they got called in on that Saturday, they wouldn't be allowed to use that Saturday as overtime. So that's the differentiation we're trying to make.
So in that instance, it's overtime after 32, not overtime.
Exactly.
40.
It's basically counting the vacation time towards their
As it is
40-hour
hour.
requirement in order to be eligible for overtime.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes, thank you, I wasn't quite tracking either.
Yeah,
I hear you.
I was thinking it's a little convoluted.
Well, it's just unusual.
And part of it too is it's correcting an error, right? Because it's always been that way. We changed something and we took something away that we probably didn't even realize we were taking away, and now we're sort of fixing that.
And the chiefs brought it to our attention.
Yeah, so, good.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Do you want to talk just a little bit, I guess, while we have you? We have a few minutes, or you can maybe address it under town manager's report, but you could just get back to what you were talking about, or you just started to talk about, which is performance reviews and compensation, things of that nature. You can talk about it now?
Yeah, I can talk about it now. So so Sandy has been working very closely with the personnel board. So as you recall, in 2014, the town went through a very comprehensive classification study where they looked at every job here in town. They revised the job description, and part of going through that process, we had a consultant. The consultant has a scoring system, and they go through the scoring system based upon the job tasks, the roles and responsibilities, and they assign certain numbers to each one of those roles and responsibilities, and at the end, you have a total. And so that total then puts you in a certain classification. So say you score 200 points in your job description, it may put you in a pay grade classification of a 5. If you score 350 points based upon your job description, which, in this case, it would be a more rigorous job, maybe requires more responsibility, higher education, it'll put you, say, in a classification of a grade 7. So that's how we arrived, and everyone in town is slotted in some pay grade classification. What they didn't do is they didn't create the compensation piece of that. So each one of those classifications has a range. So I'll say, a grade 2 could be a range of $32,000 a year to $42,000 a year, like a grade 2 position. And so what ended up happening during that time is they plugged people into these grades and they just sat there for 5 years. So the personnel board working with Sandy, they took the next step and said, okay, now that we have these ranges, we should then create steps. So each one of these ranges has 12 steps. So you will get hired as a step 1, for example, and you can only elevate to step 2 and beyond through the annual performance evaluation. So every year, folks will get their COLA, their cost of living increase. But if they only get their cost of living increase, they basically, their salary is just running parallel to the CPI or inflation, right? So they're never able to really make any more money. They're only able to pay the existing bills based upon inflation. So the step grade system gives them at least the opportunity that if they do well in the course of that year and they meet all their goals and objectives, that their supervisor can then make a recommendation that they move to the next step. And so there's really their pay raise. Does that make sense? So that's what the personnel board is in the process, and I'm sure Sandy's been working with them right along, so I'm sure she has a lot of details.
The only thing I was going to add is that the rangers increase by the COLA each year too. So if you're hired in at the minimum rate, you stay in past, you stay at that minimum rate forever. There was no way to move through the range of your position based on your performance. So what we're creating is a performance-based step program. Mm-hmm. So you don't live and die wherever you started from.
Mm-hmm. So the cost of living goes with each grade, right?
That's right.
So they'd get one in the first grade, they'd get the step increase plus the cost of living.
Yeah.
Right. So the cost of living they will get every year,
Yeah.
unless we have a kind of a poor economy, then, as you know, Maureen, sometimes you can't give out COLAs. But in a strong economy or a stable economy, we always try to give out COLAs. So every employee will get their COLA. This program, as Cindy pointed out, is a performance-based opportunity to get a pay raise.
Just showing up for work will not give you a performance increase.
Mm-hmm.
So not all employees. So we're creating a new performance appraisal system to go along with this.
Mm-hmm. So I always thought that was different. When you see municipal jobs listed, you always see a range of dollars within that salary, but it's usually not a big swing in dollars. May say between, whatever, 20 and 2250, let's just say. Mm-hmm. So the only thing that I would be very curious is how could you possibly have a job with 12 individual steps within the job? Understand how it could be that
Because you don't get
incremental, that many.
Well, it's funny because I was at the other end of the spectrum, like how do we not have that? I sort of take for granted coming from whatever the private sector that it's like you have the ability to give people a performance increase. So the way I would answer your question from my sort of corporate background is like you've got person A that's doing the same job, they've been doing it for 10 years, they're much better at it than the brand new person you just hired, so they're going to earn more than the person that just started because they're better at the job. They're not doing a different job, they're doing the same job, but they get more done, they're more effective, they're more of a leader, they can coach the new person, they can do training, they can answer questions from other departments, they can participate more in planning. So there's this sort of breadth of things that can move someone through a range even with one job description. That's just standard operating procedure in the private sector.
And I think by defining this gives us another tool in our recruitment process. So it's something else we can sell to to a new employee.
Is there a criteria under the performance evaluation?
The personnel
Standard,
board, yes, Sandy can speak to that.
Yes, that's still in process.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't have I don't have the appraisal
Yeah.
to show you yet, but, for instance, there'll be 5 different measures, and it'll be like goal setting.
Goal setting.
So it'll be, also
Accomplishments.
yeah.
Okay.
In the-
Real goals.
And checks and balances are in
Yes.
place,
And
so.
that, yes.
So, for example, when we talk about checks and balances, it's not enough for the supervisor who may be supervising somebody they worked with for 15 years to just, I'll use the term, military term, pencil whip a performance evaluation. So they have to bring that performance evaluation to human resources, which would be Sandy, to say, these goals and objectives are realistic and attainable. And so go ahead and work with your staff on these realistic goals. And then, once we establish that, and they come back a year later and say, did you really accomplish these goals? And so, if the answer is yes to that, then there would be a recommendation to give that person an increase and go on to the next step.
And I think that's the key thing, is it's always a recommendation, right? So the supervisor, the boss, whoever it is that's setting the goals, and she was on that, look at you. Look at, she's already there.
Thank you, Kelly.
Nice, that was, you were ready for that one. You had a timer set, didn't you?
No.
An alarm?
I just noticed what time it was.
Yeah, nice work, nice work. So, it's not just the supervisor, right, that says, oh, hey, I gave you some cushy goals, or hey, I overstated what you did, so you met these. Like, they come up with a recommendation, and then who's the final approver?
It'll be dependent, so that's what we're trying to figure out, I think.
Right, well, between the personnel board and the town manager.
Yeah, and sort of who approves those recommendations. And then at some point, whatever the recommendations are, and if they get approved, then they still have to go through town meeting and get approved as part of the
So if you
budget
go through Board of
process.
Selectmen, all
and town
finance
meeting,
can
and go through us and through FinCom, so.
Part of the
they're sort
budget
of-
process.
As part of the budget
Yeah.
process, so.
Right.
If we see something wacky, we can question it.
That's the thing, you always feel like in our town of our size, you feel like each job is very, very individualistic. Like you wouldn't say that there's any one job other than naturally the union jobs that we have, but most all other jobs are, yeah, again, very individualistic with as far as what you have to accomplish. There's a lot of people that cross-train, which is very nice. We have people that can cover for one another. But,
It is a way to reward people for their performance, which we don't have in place right now.
right.
Does this include the union's performance evaluations?
So, fire and police unions have the step and grade system. They've had it in place for a very long time. And they are required to have performance evaluations, but let's be honest, the CBA, the collective bargaining agreements, do not require performance evaluations in order to get a step increase. So they're going to get their step increase either way, as long as they show up to work. Well, what's different with what Sandy's been working on is that this step increase is tied to great performance.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, I think we should make a motion, assuming we have
I
no
make
issues
a
with this.
motion that we approve the proposed changes to the policy and procedures manual.
I'll second.
I make that unanimous action? All right. Next is recognition. Does anybody have anything for recognition? No? Okay. What's that? That's it.
I'd like to recognize Kelly McElver for getting the lights back on so quickly. And I think we said it already, but a special shout out again to Rep. Meridian and his charitable organization. I just wanted to say that again. It's remarkable.
Absolutely. It's not often you see that kind of a donation, $6,000.
$6,000, that goes a long way for Janice and their organization doing great work, so it's
Right.
wonderful to see.
Okay, next is town manager's report. Derek?
All right, so I'll start off by talking about staffing. Sandy has been working very closely, in particular with Chief Bradley, to try to advance the application and then review period for our 2 vacancies for police officers. And so we are happy to report that we're actually vetting 2 police officers who are currently in the academy. There is a Army National Guard Academy that's taking place in Worcester, and Chief Bradley reached out to the chief out there and said, listen, I got 2 vacancies, send me some of your candidates. So I guess 2 of them are very strong, so those 2 individuals are being vetted currently. As soon as we feel that they've met all the criteria, they pass all the background checks and screenings, then there'll be more of a formal recommendation to the Board of Selectmen as to whether or not they're going to come work for the town. And the same can be said for one DPW employee. As you recall, in November, there was a town meeting approved an appropriation to hire a new water operator, severely needed. We have 3 individuals that are currently out right now in the wastewater department, so that person is going through the background checks and the vetting process as well. We're hoping to have that person on board, what are we thinking, after the holidays, early January?
Just because of the backgrounding and physicals and things like that. I might just add, we got very fortunate that we were able to hire someone that had all the licenses except for one little one that has to be tweaked, which is highly unusual.
I would say that's great, because we were worried that we were going to spend a long time trying to find that person. So.
They'll be on the ground running in a couple of weeks because they have all the licenses.
And I don't think people realize that the DPW, no matter what position we have over there, requires licensing. So if you work in the highway division, we require you to have your CDL license or your hoisting license. If you want to work in the wastewater division, we require that you have your wastewater 1 or your water or your distribution license. So there's a lot of licensing that's involved in those positions. And so we were very fortunate that we found one individual that had carried, high percentages of those licenses. So again, we're vetting that person and doing the background checks as we speak. And we're also doing the same for one van driver over at the COA. As far as the fire department, a little bit different. It's been a little bit more slow going. We're hoping when Chief DeFranza returns that we'll start the interview process. We advertised back in October, I think it was, for firefighter paramedic positions.
We did interview some, and we told them that with vacations and holidays, so we'll pick up where we left off in January.
So again, when you think about such a small operation or a small community, that's 2, 3, 4, 6 positions that we're currently actively trying to recruit to fill.
With regard to fire and EMS, were those per diems or were those full-time?
No, those were firefighter paramedics.
Firefighter paramedic, the
Yes.
full-time positions, yeah.
Yes.
Those are difficult.
Difficult to fill,
find.
so
It's still a tough road.
fingers crossed.
Tough road ahead on that one, no doubt.
Still, yeah.
Moving on, I just wanted to announce, we received notification yesterday from the Mass Office of Disability that the town was granted a $14,000 grant to rebuild the lower walkway at Kiwanis Beach. So as you recall, I've talked a lot about that, and kudos to Andrew, who took the lead on that. Andrew St. George was our rec director. He took the lead on that, worked with the Disability Commission, and was able to package a application that the state was willing to fund. So again,
Sorry, that includes access to the fire pit?
that will include access to the fire pit,
Great.
the pavilion, and I know I'm missing one.
Bathroom.
Bathroom, pavilion, fire pit.
Yeah.
I think those 3, yep. Yeah, so they'll redo that. So as of today, I have, since we got the award, I've issued the bid for that, and the bid will close in mid-January. Again, it's a good time to put things up to bid, so we're hoping that we get a couple responses for that.
Very good. And is that the total cost of that project, that 14K will?
Yeah, CME, who engineered the plans, they project it should be $14,100 to build that. Yep. Yep.
We should recognize the work of Andrew St. George to get those funds and do that grant work. He definitely has taken his licks over the past couple of years with the ramp work up top, even though he's not a designer, engineer, or construction supervisor. So when he does something good for the town, we should make sure we call that out. So, good job.
Good job by
He's
him.
been forced to take on that role and familiarize himself with those design standards.
He's learned a lot, and this is a great thing for the town, so that's good.
And then another grant, Chief DeFranco notified me today, even though he's on vacation, that the town received, or the fire department received a grant for $3,400 from the State Executive Office of Public Safety, that they can go ahead and acquire more turnout gear. So again, that turnout gear was a big issue, remember last year's budget? We had old turnout gear, we put in a replacement plan as of last year, we're gonna continue that replacement plan, and this $3,400 will buy us a couple more suits. So, as far as the feasibility committee, Kelly met with the feasibility committee, which she's on, and they're very close to issuing their RFP for a designer, OPM. It looks like that's going to be due on January 21st, right? It'll be issued on December 25th, so next Wednesday. And so we're really hoping that we can get the building committee organized and appointed in short order, so hopefully early part of January, because this is going to be their first task. They will be responsible to review the responses and then select the owner's project manager. Again, responses are due on January 21st.
That's a 5-person committee? Or 7?
The building committee is a 5-person, but you all had thought maybe we should go to a 7-person committee.
Right, we haven't actually formed that yet.
Right.
Correct, yeah.
Right, so that's, and I'll talk, maybe we can pick some dates for, you mentioned you want to talk about scheduling for the first quarter, so maybe we can talk about that in a few minutes. The RFP committee, I had put on my list to just talk about an update, but we talked a little bit already. They're nearing the end of their design standards. I had asked them to meet with the Board of Selectmen at the very first meeting in January, so they can present the design standards to you all. They met with the planning board today to present those design standards as well. And then, as Steve Ackerton pointed out today, they plan to go out to bid with the full RFP to develop that property into a mixed-use project sometime in late February. And then I have a question. So I wanted to propose at future agendas that maybe we add an additional item on this agenda called liaison updates. And not that it has to be there, but this would be an opportunity for board members to talk about any liaison updates that you have based upon the various committees that, you're constantly communicating with. So you don't have to do updates at every meeting, but, if there was BVT was having their meetings to talk about their budget, you may want to report that back. I know that that's come up to me a couple different occasions, that how come we're not hearing back from various committees. So in Plymouth, that's something that we did. We had a place for board members to talk about updates that they may have based upon the committees that they're assigned to. So it's something to consider if you'd like to.
I think in my previous experience with different, fraternal or club organizations, we would always have a new business or an old business section, both typically on the agenda, and that's where you'd usually address things of that nature. So I would propose, just to kind of keep this simplistic, maybe we could address that under new business. So we kind of breeze by it. We really don't usually have anything to say or even acknowledge new business. So this may be a good time, let's just kind of give new business some meaning. And we'll use that to talk about, different meetings that we may have attended, or, again, liaison assignments, things of that nature. Again, just to kind of...
I'll start going, because they're gonna start all the budget processes between capital budget, FinCom, assessors, and the regional school.
Yeah, and that's the thing, a lot of these committees is, capital budget, they meet a few times a year, right? So they don't have a lot of interaction during the course of the year, but if there was a meeting that you attended that you thought that there was something worthwhile reporting back to, I'm just suggesting that we create space for it, but if you think it works on the new business, I'm just...
Unless there's is there a particular say venue that, new business only focuses on?
Yeah, so the AG, according to the open meeting law, really wants the agenda to be very specific on what you're talking about. So new business is very broad in general, so classifying something as a liaison update, if you don't address it or there's no updates and you just keep going, at least it gives the public the notice on what could be discussed. And new business to me would be a little broad, so if somebody wanted to say, I didn't know that was going to be discussed, and maybe you discuss it, and then you talk about it, and maybe you take a vote, you kind of would be in violation of the open meeting law, so I wouldn't recommend putting it, or just describing it as new business, would be what I would say.
What if we gave the lead-in under new business? Say, for instance, update on capital per morning, or update on BBT per Steve?
I think what Kelly is saying is that under new business, the public out there won't know what we're going to be doing.
That's why I was gonna say, we could put it as, just as like, let's just say we would put, invite guests, we put a name there. Under new business, we could put what we're gonna talk about. Do you think that would solve the problem?
It would solve the problem, because you're giving folks notice in advance of what you're going to talk about. The only thing that does is, it's very specific, and so it corners the board to speak specifically about something versus something general saying liaison updates. If you don't have an update, no harm, no foul. If you have something to talk about, maybe you just walked out of a meeting, maybe you just came from the planning board meeting and you're the liaison of the planning board and you walked into this meeting, you could give a 5-minute brief update about that. So liaison updates is just a general way to allow folks to have a conversation about a particular subject.
And Sandy pointed out that new business is more for issues that if something came up within the last 48 hours that was imperative that you guys discuss, even though it wasn't posted on the agenda, the Attorney General does allow people to discuss and maybe vote on something if you did not anticipate before Friday that it was going to come up. But, I don't know, say something happened with a truck on Monday and you guys needed to take something out of a trust fund. That is really what new business should be, is unanticipated, based on how the agenda is written, unanticipated discussion.
Okay.
So I.
So under no circumstance does it fit under that category,
Exactly.
basically it doesn't?
I was going to say,
That's what we have on the agenda.
some of this is semantics, so, what the Attorney General wants isn't semantics, we have to follow that, but, right, whether we list something under new business and put liaison updates under new business, or just have liaison updates as its separate agenda item, it doesn't matter. I think the point is, we want to create an opportunity to be more active in some of our liaison relationships, and give ourselves the opportunity to talk about some of those connections. Is that where, I'm just trying to understand where this is coming from right now, what made you think of this?
I'm just thinking about, because there's a lot of committees doing a lot of things, and EDC is a great example. They came in, they briefed us for over an hour on things, and so we're not going to have the EDC come in once a month to talk about what they did, but if a board member was a liaison to the EDC, and I don't think we have that, but if you were, and you attended a meeting, that would give you some space that you can say, I just attended the EDC meeting as the liaison, and I want to let you know what they're thinking about this transit hub over on High Street. So, to me, it's just an opportunity for us to share information amongst each other, versus having a committee come in and give a full-blown update.
I get your points. I'm actually more of a fan of what you're saying, which is if we've got something to talk about, we should be specific about it, right? If I went to a library trustee meeting and I have something I want to update the board and the public on, then I should put liaison update, right? Library trustees update, or whatever it would be, so that people know, hey, I'm interested in the library trustees, let's put it. So, I would be a fan of putting the liaison update as an agenda item, but if we have something to talk about, we should list it there. We could maybe put something unexpected, I don't know, but I feel like if I had an update from a committee I had, I would want to prepare people for what I plan to talk about.
Right. All right, well, we can talk about that a little bit more as those in the upcoming meetings, figure out how we want to do that. If we want to plug it in, as you said, maybe when we have something to report, we could plug it in. I just don't want our agenda to have, a full-page framework
It's just
with a bunch of empty slots, that's all.
just a thought for you to consider.
Sure. Okay.
So the last thing I just want to talk about is, and Steve, you had mentioned this, well, actually, before I go there, because I want to talk about the first quarter schedule, is Christmas Eve. I know I had suggested that, we have town halls open until 6 PM on Christmas Eve. A lot of folks are already eating dinner by 6 PM. The library trustees have already taken a vote that they're going to close the library at 3 PM. And so I just wanted to get confirmation as to when you think would be a good time to allow folks to start to enjoy the holidays with their family, both on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve.
Early days Friday, typically.
12.
is Locked up at 4?
12.
No, I'm sorry, on regular days of the week, it's 4. It's 4.
Friday, or Tuesday is 6.
I see, Tuesday 6, I see. I was just trying to make sure that we understood what the hours were. And Friday, of course, is what we're talking about. Okay. Did you have a recommendation? I think when we...
Yeah, I mean, I initially had said 3 PM because that's what the trustees had, that's what they plan on doing, but then I know that there was other thoughts.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I mean, from my perspective, and I'm probably on the more generous side of this, but I feel like, there are a few major holidays a year, and I would even advocate for this for the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, which is sort of the other big holiday that's out there that involves a lot of family and sometimes some traveling. For me, giving people the opportunity to start their holiday at noon is good because it allows them to get home, it allows them to do whatever shopping they need to do to sort of get prepared, to do whatever traveling, so that they're ready by dinner time and sort of can participate in whatever the family activities are. That's just me, that's based on my own family sort of routines and what we do. Like, I really do use that time. It's very common in my workplace that, afternoon on the Wednesday or the day before a big holiday like that, people head home. So I would certainly be supportive of that for the town hall employees. That's just my
No, I would
perspective.
support that also.
See, I'm a self-employed guy, so I usually end
Exactly.
up having to work. So I'll work, I have to work when the work's there, and typically, for us anyways, if you close early, people are always gonna complain.
Yeah.
So my only fear is, if you close that early, you're gonna hear complaints. So that's why I think Derek had suggested 3 o'clock. I thought, 3, that's a good time, because people plenty of time to, get home, prepare dinner and that sort of thing. Again, I thought that was certainly reasonable, and I don't think we're taking too many hours where people may complain if they're coming in to pay a bill or have a question or whatnot, so.
We could try it.
I would think 3 works for me, but.
We could try, I mean, we've never done noon before, right? Have we done 3, I think, in the past is what's been done?
Yeah, last year we closed the doors at 3 PM.
At 3. Did anyone complain?
Not to my knowledge. Usually on December 24th, people are
Not thinking about.
scrambling
going
around
holiday,
trying to,
paying water.
and no one's pulling a water.
No building permits, no one's paying their water bill.
So,
I mean,
Somebody-
No, I know, but I mean, I think that's, you're talking about how many people that would benefit from, this type of change.
less than 20.
So you're talking about 20 people's benefit for a person or two that might complain. And if that, right, like, there's a chance nobody can complain and there's 20 people that are ecstatic, or you can have 1 person or 2 people complain and 20 people are ecstatic. And if those people complain or we get more complaints, then we say, all right, well, that didn't work. Selectmen fail.
Excuse me, whenever we close for inclement weather or whatever, we post it, we tweet it, and we always
People
have,
know, yeah.
announced holiday hours or snow hours or delayed openings, so people get the word.
That-
For whatever you
that-
decide.
We could do that.
Yeah.
We always do.
And I was going to say, to your point though, Steve, I was in here Monday and somebody had come in to pay the treasurer on Friday to pay a bill, to pay their tax bill, and the treasurer doesn't work on Fridays. So they were confused and didn't realize that. So there is an opportunity to try to be clear with people when we're open, when people are working, when people aren't working. So
I think most
I'd be
people
sensitive
know
to that.
Fridays, yeah, Friday's always a short day. I think most people know that, but you're right.
But for the treasurer, it's a non-day.
Right.
Right, so there's no, which is fine, it's on the website, it's actually listed on the website, but it's a little obscured for people to see, so I know that that's a challenge. But that's just an example where sometimes no matter how much you communicate, someone's gonna show up at 3 o'clock on New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve and go, why aren't they open?
Right.
So, we'll just have to see if that happens.
Right, right. And
I
what-
still say noon.
You say noon as well?
Yeah.
Right, boy, you're really making me look like a Scrooge. I'm sorry, John Hall.
We don't always have to be a unanimous vote. We can be, it's good to not always agree.
All right, so everybody's gonna be throwing stuff
I know
out
you've been
there.
talking about Christmas Eve, but I threw out Christmas and New Year's. Does it make sense to do 12 and 3? 12, would that make you feel better? Do 12 on December 24th and do 3 o'clock on December 31st?
Yeah, people have a lot of time to get caught up on New Year's Eve, so let's not act like that's a mad
You're right.
That's not a mad
There's not a lot of preparation for that.
Right, need to prepare 11
Of course
o'clock.
there is.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I mean, sometimes there is some preparation. I happen to be doing it.
That's what I
That's right, too, yeah. So that'd be fine. If that,
Would that be okay?
I still reserve the right to complain. I'm not gonna go that so far, but, all right. Anything else?
Do we need a motion or just?
We need a motion to do that.
I mean, it never hurts to have a motion.
Huh? You don't think so?
No, I said it never hurts.
Oh.
I said never hurts.
I was thinking.
I move that we close town hall on December 24th at noon time and on the 31st at 3.
Second.
He knows.
He's a no.
He's abstaining.
Unanimous. All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I just want to talk about the first quarter schedule, because Steve, you had made a comment that you wanted to bring this up tonight, the first quarter schedule. So, do we still want to go with the January 7th date for the Board of Selectmen meeting?
I mean, tentatively, what do we have pressing, I mean, we will have our regular business, of course, but is there anything pressing that we have to look forward to on January 7th? We're not gonna take a look at building committee applications, I didn't think till, was it the 16th? I can't
So
remember
the
date.
next meeting would be the 21st, on the day that
21st.
our fees are due.
Or we're gonna have something about the Warren Street on the 7th.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do need to talk about that. So I guess I think we can still meet on the 7th. You won't be around, but I think it would be probably important if Dennis is here,
Okay.
so that we can kind of, naturally, I mean, unless you think there's some,
No, I don't think we're gonna have a busy business agenda on that day. I think the agenda primarily is gonna be driven by, what I would have thought is the election, and the RFP committee would like to come in at some point and talk about the design standards.
okay.
So I think
I mean, if you're
it would be a
familiar-
light agenda either
Okay.
way.
I mean, if you're, I'm sorry to cut you
And
off.
if you want to put Warren Street on there, the closure of Warren Street, we can certainly arrange for Dennis to be here to talk about that. That's what I thought I heard.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have Dennis here, so we at least can kind of understand a little bit better what, what's it gonna look like, as far as
Yeah,
Jersey
as long
barriers.
as he can bring all of the updates, right? We can't just get a DPW update, right? Like, I want to know that the schools are all set about Warren Street, that we confirmed with
Oh, okay, right.
Chief Bradley, Chief DeFranco, right? Like, because we had a bunch of questions that we laid out, so I just want to make sure if he comes, he's answering all those questions, because those are the answers we need to make the decision. So,
Right, and so a lot of that stuff, I would say that it wouldn't be Dennis's responsibility to orchestrate that with the fire chief and police chief and the schools, so, which, that's my
and
responsibility?
you're not gonna be,
Right, so
which
maybe
is
we
why
punt
I
that
raised
to the
it.
21st.
that's why I raised it.
Okay. We'll put
And
that
when
up.
were we gonna go out to bid on the Warren Street?
I'm working on that right now, so I'm thinking no later than this month, we'll go out to bid.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yep. We'll work on the Fowler Street Bridge as well, that's going out to bid probably in a few weeks. We'll have concurrently, we'll probably have like 7 or 8 bids all out at the same time. We have a lot of bids going on this winter.
The other thing we could do, not to make more work for you between now and the 7th, is you could do all that research. Dennis could be here from his perspective, but you could send a memo to the board just saying, I did this, 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 it's all set, and we can take that into consideration.
Yeah.
So that we don't have to put the Warren Street discussion off, given that we just talked about
Yeah, I'm happy to do
it
that.
being urgent, if that's.
Right, I'm happy to do that, if that's fine with you.
So we would stick with the 7th and the 21st. You want to stay with those dates,
Yeah,
stay with the 7th and the 21st, and on the,
7th, do
I
Warren
mean,
Street and Building
you
Committee.
know, the option is we could go the 14th and the 21st
That's the other
and
option.
draw, or why don't we do the 14th and the 28th?
14.
That conflicts with the planning board, and they have this month, so if you do those dates, you're downstairs.
Okay.
If we do the 14th, I would recommend we do it starting at 6 PM, going till 7:30, because the brewer is gonna be in this building as well. He wanted to do a 7 o'clock start, and I told him I would be present to talk to the crowd about the collaboration.
So the 14th probably
That's
doesn't
on the
work.
14th?
Say again?
That's on the 14th, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
so-
probably doesn't work.
So I would have to leave no later than 7:30 to go sit with the brewer
Okay.
on the 14th.
Jeez, we got a lot going on in this town.
We do. We gotta put the brakes on.
Yeah,
I think.
planning board
Sounds like we haven't really too much.
Public hearing, so they have to be in this room.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll still meet on the 7th. We'll keep it a light agenda. And then I guess we'll communicate via email, and we'll see how things are progressing.
Yeah.
And if we want to have Dennis come in to talk about Warren Street, if you want to kick Warren Street till the 21st, let's just see how.
So what if you have 8 applications for the building committee? You don't want to have the election on the 7th?
I would think we would want to appoint the building committee as soon as we can,
No, I would too.
right? Given, I mean, that's pressing to me.
Yeah, if we have some good
Just,
applications.
we've had a lot of people show interest, so I have a feeling in the next 7 days, we're gonna be getting a lot of applications in.
Let's have that as a discussion item on the 7th then.
All right.
Assuming we have
Right, the application.
enough applications, correct?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that's right, because we have to have all the applications and hold
Right.
basically an election.
Right.
So. we have to
Because you only wanna do it once.
Right.
Because you get the moderator here, you get Janice, you have to get Matt all here to do the election. So that's what I was thinking, if we had 7, 8, 9 applications, you could hold the election, that's gonna take some time, and then the RFP committee wants to come in, they wanna do the update on their design standards, and then it sounds like you want to talk a little bit more about Warren Street.
What happened to this light agenda for the
Well,
second?
that's,
Yes, just 3 items.
that's why I really think that
Without Derek?
I
can't have that big election for the building committee without Derek, are you kidding me? Gonna be zigging and zagging.
Looks like Warren Street's back at the 21st.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's keep the.
No, I mean, I'm mostly kidding, but.
All right, so we'll do Warren Street and the RFP committee then on the 7th. We'll keep it light.
And you want to kick the election to the 21st?
That's what I'm hearing.
Unless,
No, I don't.
unless you do the election on the
Our-
14th, unless you do the election on the 14th, and then it's only an hour, and you'll be done before 6, maybe. Or as the town clerk, I can help oversee the election that night on the 7th.
That would be helpful.
That would be good.
I just feel like we might need a little hand-holding through that process.
And the-
And actually, I should speak for myself, because remember, I was trying to do math like with 7s and 2s and 5s. So,
But it wasn't working out there, huh?
the election, when I read that thing, I got a little confused, I have
It
to
might be
admit,
nice
so.
to have the RFP committee and the building committee in the same room. at the same time.
Yeah, because RFP committee will be here anyways.
That's what I'm saying, but having them in the same room.
Yeah, I'd rather do that than meet 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I don't want to meet the 14th if we're meeting the 7th or the 21st.
I agree.
Right, so I would say we're gonna have to wait and see what it's gonna look like from an application standpoint, because it could be a moot point, we're eating this up and we may only have 3 applications, so.
That's why you're the chairman.
Why don't we wait? I'm doing something right.
And then can we at least schedule?
So that was a motion on the floor. I'm sorry.
I just would love to lock this one in. March 17th, can we at least move that to the 24th? So March 17th, we have a meeting scheduled, can we at least move that to the 24th? We have 5 Tuesdays in March. So,
Let me see what March looks like.
What's March, what's the first
I
one?
feel like March 24th is, what is that?
17th is typically St. Patty's Day,
That's,
right?
yeah, I feel like there's some.
well, there you go.
There you go.
There's something in that zone.
All the Irish in me.
Come on, you got us for corned beef and cabbage. Oh, you can? All right. Like,
Nice.
I just invited?
I'm coming through the woods, Maureen.
Do that too.
I don't get invited?
I see all of
Oh, well, all right.
Yeah.
She did.
Sandy invited us.
I invited y'all.
Well, thank you both.
20, I mean, that's fine with me, I think. I don't.
Yeah.
March 24th?
So what would March look like? What do we have right
So
now? You have the 5th, the 17th, and the,
Right now, we would be meeting on the 3rd and the 17th. That would be our March agenda.
On that note, keep in mind, the 3rd is the presidential
Election.
election. You
okay.
don't normally meet when there's an election.
Run that by me again?
Presidential
Primary
primary?
for
Oh, the primary, I was like, what?
I know, how we lose that much time, right?
Oh, so that works out better.
So do you want to move it to the 10th and the 24th, or is that going to interfere with the planning board?
Or do we want to do the 3rd and the 24th? Or we don't want to do the 3rd because of the election?
But before you go off the planning board, as long as they don't have public hearings, they don't have anything on television. So as long as we can put them in a nice room, like me in the lower conference room, I don't think they will have a problem with that. And I don't see them having a public hearing that far out. We could coordinate.
We would just have to let them know because they're having a public, we would just have to let them know. I don't think they're having a public hearing tonight. So as long as they don't schedule a public hearing those nights, they should be okay. So we just have to let them know.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we have to kind of leave that up in the air for now.
I think we could vote to say we're going to have our meetings on the 10th and the 24th, and we can communicate with the planning board that we will be in this room, and so if they have because they only use this room because for no other reason, just to use this room. They don't use the television, so they could use the downstairs conference room just as well as this room. But if they advertise a public hearing, they have to hold it in the room in which they advertise it. So if we tell them in advance, listen,
They just can advertise it for
downstairs, and then they'll be fine. They won't have a problem with that.
All right, so if everybody's agreeable, we'll do, that sound good to you, Maureen? And Brett, that sound good for you? So the 10th and the 24th, we'll skip the 17th.
So no Super Tuesday.
Oh,
Oh, no, that's fine with me. I just,
You were shaking your head at me, so.
well, because I was just the whole...
We have to post, so Sandy, you'll post for the 17th? Maureen's house?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
It's true.
We should put on camera, this is a public meeting, we haven't adjourned yet. As long as we don't deliberate, right, we can be in the same room, we just have to eat corned beef and not talk.
That's right.
In February is the regular schedule, 4 and 18.
February, yeah.
18 is probably President's Day. No, I'm sorry, I take that back, that's Monday.
That's Monday, yeah, so the 4th and the 18th.
Just
Seventeenth
wanted
is
to
probably-
so no
17th,
change in February.
So no change in January, no change in February, just
So we'll do the 4th.
the
and
March
18th.
dates.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Sounds good, 4th and the 18th there. All right. Nothing else for
I don't.
town manager's report?
Good, thanks.
All right. Very good. New business. Anybody have anything on the new business?
Not I.
All right. Look ahead topics, liquor license policy. Anybody have anything they want to say quickly about that?
No.
Okay. Do we know why it's on there?
No.
That was a look-ahead topic. Selectman Dwinell brought that up at the last meeting, that she wanted to, at some point in the future,
Oh, okay.
talk about that. So it's just there as a placeholder until you're ready to put it on the agenda for a real discussion.
Actually, it's
town
for the
hall
whole
rental.
town hall policy, because
Right,
you
it's a
have
town
one
hall
thing in one
policy.
area and another thing that contradicts it.
Okay.
Yeah, right. It's the town hall policy,
It's the town hall policy?
usage policy.
That's why I asked. I thought we might
Okay.
have something. All right, very good.
So not the liquor license, that's not the one day.
No, that's regulated by the state anyways.
So it's the town hall usage policy we'll keep as a look-ahead topic.
Okay. All right. And anything under public
I
comment?
typo.
Okay.
What's the
No
type?
public comment, I see, none? All right.
Liquor license policy.
I make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Sweet too, that was in my brain.
Maureen, would you like to adjourn?
Oh, second.
Make that unanimous action.